where he was attacked just out in public due to racism.
And he just ran as quickly as possible before the incident happened.
Now this incident happened. Someone threatened his life when my daughter went through bullying, because the youth of today are the adults of tomorrow who's going to lead this nation. Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of the Conscious Leader podcast. Today is special because we're speaking all things parental leadership. Now, I know we are used to watching or with me sharing on this channel more the conscious leader from a business perspective and how they're consciously leading their industry. But today, my special guest, Yuliana Gunawan, yes, she's here to share how she is leading her home, specifically her son, who experienced a very traumatic experience. And I will allow her to share that shortly, but stay tuned. If you're new to the channel, welcome. And if you like this episode, I want you to hit that like and subscribe button. Let's get into it. Hi, Yuliana. Welcome once again.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So I know you and I spoke before, where we talk about how your experience, how you're leading the industry, what leadership was. And then a couple of weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, your son went through a serious life-altering event where he was attacked just out in public due to racism. So please, share a bit more of what's going on.
He normally went for run on Wednesday in the afternoon by himself. And then he went into the public toilet in the park. And in the public toilet, he met one Caucasian teenager. And then he said that if you don't leave the park, the teenager will bash his head. So my son was so frightened, and because he was a good runner, and he just ran as quickly as possible before the incident happened. And from my perspective, right, especially recently, whereby we watch the news in UK about the anti-migrants, and also in US about the presidential campaign, and the president candidate sometimes gives comments about migrants. And it's brought the image of migrants that we steal other people's jobs, and as a result the racial attack or racism increases eventually. It happens before, during COVID, whereby because we are a Chinese descent, and during the COVID, I received minors racial like kind of like a attack, but it's a minor toward us. That was during the COVID, and now it is the time. So yes, I think this is need to be addressed, because I believe migrants contribute to the economy of the country. Like if we can use our logical thinking, if migrant didn't contribute to the country, the government will eventually stop the program, like stop taking migrants. Why the government keep on taking migrants? Because it proves that migrants contribute to the success of the country economy.
Yeah. Well, and it's true, right? As the more people are working or starting enterprises, businesses, gaining employment, the better the economy is. But back to your incident in during COVID, and that was a very challenging time. Like, of course, I'm not of Chinese descent, but it was blasted everywhere as the virus coming from China, and that it was invented in a lab, and all of these things that we're saying. And so a lot of people of Asian descent, not only Chinese, because a lot of people don't know the difference from different cultures, if they're Japanese or Korean and such, they were under attack, and
Mm.
they were attacked verbally and physically. A lot of older, especially older, the older generation was attacked. During that time, how did you explain to your son, like what was going on during that time? So you experienced this minor attack, and then so what? Like, did you set up policies? Did you guys feel like, okay, we can't really do much? What was? Take us through that step.
The steps that I explained to my sons for the his mental health and our mental health
Mm-hmm.
at the time is to ignore,
Mm,
because we have to believe in ourselves that whatever they are saying to us is not true. First, we have to differentiate what is the false belief, which is their perspective on us, which is we cannot control, like we caused the COVID, which is not true, because we didn't cause the COVID. Like, personally, as individual, I didn't cause the COVID.
mm-hmm.
My son didn't cause the COVID as an
Ritual.
individual.
Yes. Okay.
So number one is to recognize what is true and what is false, and number two is to we cannot control what other people say about us, but we can control ourselves, our emotions. So by believing that this is not true, and there are ignorance, and it take control. We have a power to control to
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. Having power to control our emotion is very important,
Yeah.
because as a human, when we have power to choose, it empower us. And secondly, I asked my son to meditate. So when suddenly the anger just burst into us,
Mm-hmm.
asked him to meditate, like inhale and exhale.
Yeah.
So basically, inhale like 8 seconds,
Yeah.
4 seconds,
Breath work.
exhale.
Yeah, you're doing
Yeah.
breath work, coming back
Yes.
to the breath, and bringing down those emotions, like learn to master the emotions, releasing it, and because once we have control of the breath, then now it becomes clearer for us to think clearly. And now instead of reacting, now you're responding. So you're learning to master yourself, and in these types of situations, it's always the victims that have to find the solution to move on.
Mhm.
Because although you were attacked, there wasn't really anything at that time that could have been done. Um, because there were all these other restrictions that's happening. If you go to report it, they might think it's minor, they may not address. There's all of these different factors. But at the end of the day, you needed for you and your home to be safe and to feel secure and to recognize, you have to uh, take those steps, right? To ensure that he also knows how to heal from this so that he
Mhm.
emerges stronger. And I completely understand. I'm a parent. My daughter was bullied as well. And so, taking these actionable steps, you have to um, know and implement in the home. Sometimes before something happens, or even when something happens, you have to know how to help them through that situation so they do not end up festering in anger, in hatred,
Yep.
in all of these things. And that's exactly what you're sharing with him. And because at the end of the day, when there's hatred, when there is anger, it affects
Mhm.
the person itself, right? It's coming in, you're ingesting that anger, you're ingesting that hatred on a personal level. And so now all these other areas of your life become stuck, becomes blocked, becomes dormant because you're so fixated on a specific emotion that you're allowing to control and dictate your life. Uh, and so
Yes.
I commend you for taking him through that journey with them during COVID when that happened, and people probably said some cruel things. Let's fast forward to 2024, September 2024. And your son, teenager, this is not a young child. He's also not a grown adult yet. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he goes for a run like he normally does every day. Before he went for a run, I want to explain what was the climate like, what was the atmosphere, the energy in that week of what's going on in the news, what's happening, like because did he just when there's an attack, sometimes we think it's random, and sometimes we think it's or mistaken identity, and yes, those things, there's those possibilities that are open. But then in retrospect, when we take a look, we say, was there anything in the news that was happening? Was there anything leading up? Did he know these guys, these young boys that happened?
Nothing. I believe this is kind of like a random because um everything is just normal, just peace,
Yeah.
nothing. I do not know. I believe this is random, but I teach my son instead of consuming with anger. So let's just pray and forgive,
Yeah.
but just let it go
Hmm.
and treat the person as ignorance. And he has to forgive himself and also forgive the persons. It doesn't make any sense when I said that he has to forgive himself, because sometimes when we become a victim, sometimes subconsciously we blame it ourselves.
Hmm.
Like, I must do something wrong. All the negative thought keep on feeling ourselves, and we blame ourselves. So for me, I just teach him to forgive himself.
Hmm.
Maybe he did something wrong, or his gesture or something. I do not know. So let's start forgiving himself and forgiving other persons and let it go,
Yeah.
instead of like fixated to that issues and consumes with anger,
Hmm.
and we cannot concentrate and cannot move on.
Yeah. And
Yes.
so that happens. So you were speaking before when we first started. You're saying sometimes people go on TV and they talk about migrants and how migrants are um, taking all the jobs and creating havoc. Was that happening in your area or not?
Not happen in our area,
Hmm.
not happened, but eventually, because it started from the climate overseas. It's always climate overseas when we see the tensions right now in UK, and this is from my experience through the COVID. Like, it started news from the feeding news from overseas,
Hmm.
and suddenly, normally it happens with the teenagers. Maybe they are not mature enough, or they are not using their logical thinking on wisdoms, or the parents also have the same false belief, and eventually it will affect their reasoning and attitude,
Yeah. Well, I'm.
because this is my how to say, my perspective, right? uh, the economy, when the economy downturn, there must be something to blame, and
Mm,
then the group that needs to be to blame is always a minority,
mm,
in this case, a migrant.
yeah. Okay. So there was like a downturn in the economy, and then there's a rise, an increased rise in violence and hatred and stuff towards um, migrants.
Not as severe as in overseas and UK,
Hmm.
but we haven't feel it for a long time, but COVID is getting intense for us, and then suddenly this happened.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, since COVID, I didn't watch TV since November 2021, because I had severe
Mm,
anxiety of receiving the negative news, and anxiety of the ratios
yeah.
attack.
Okay. Um, well, I'm happy that your son is well physically and that he's here with you still, um, because that's big. That's a huge feel 100%. I want to get into now this incident happened. Someone threatened his life. That's not something to take lightly. Um, and you've taught him initially, do the breath work, master your emotions. People are ignorant, pray and forgive.
Yes.
Yeah, so he's learned all that. This incident now happens. How does he start the healing process of this? What was your initial reaction when you come home or he comes home and he says this to you?
His reactions, of course, he was so upset,
Yes.
and then was angry, very angry, and feel that life is unfair, which
Hmm.
is true. And I have to explain to him that life basically is unfair. Whether we like it or not is unfair.
Yeah.
But then it is up to us to decide.
Hmm.
And we could take it as a lesson to improve ourselves, to self-control, to become resilient. Or we could take it as bitterness, to retaliate, and then we cannot move on, and we become one of them. And
Hmm.
I tell him that we are better than them because
Hmm.
we are able to control ourselves. So instead of consuming with anger, we first I allow him expressing himself. Very important,
Yes.
because if I do not acknowledge his emotions,
Hmm.
he cannot heal without acknowledging. He
Yes.
has to vent it out, how he feels depressed,
Hmm.
sad,
Hmm.
or angry. He has to let it go,
Yeah.
and I have to support him. I have to listen to whatever he says,
Hmm.
and after that began the healing process.
Yes.
Like we forgive, and because we are the faith persons, and we pray about it. And I teach my son to focus on things that he likes, and he likes reading. He likes watching TV, for example.
Hmm.
Just let it be.
Hmm.
Just do something that he likes,
Hmm.
and he likes reading about the geography, history. Let it be. So just focus to something that you love. So we focus our anger into something that beneficial instead of keep on talking to the
Yes.
issue.
Hmm. Yeah, you're converting, you're or transmuting one emotion into another, from anger into love, or to anger into a passion, something that you love. And I think what you did, especially since he's teenager and he's a young man, or
Mhm.
boy, young boy, man, it's it's that fine balance, because he's not a child anymore, even though he's your child. He's not fully into a man yet. And then he's going through all these other emotions, all these other hormones, all of these other things that's just going on. And now you have to take it to that next level. So allowing him to express himself, allowing him, and like in your presence, because he's going to express himself whether you're there or not. But you did it in a very healthy way. You're like, speak out, cry, yell, scream, do whatever it is that you need to do to release this anger, move through it. And so, because when you can do that, then it becomes, as you mentioned, so much easier to begin the healing process, to begin the forgiveness piece. And for people who are tuning in, that healing process is not one day. Okay,
Exactly.
that anger that he felt, it was probably a triggering moment back to COVID in 2020 or 2021, whenever that incident occurred where you were, the minor incident. And you said to him, and before that, he wasn't really a teenager at that time, or he was probably now coming into being a teenager. So, he was like, okay, mom, I'm going to follow what you have to say. But now there's something where his life is threatened, and he has to release this anger, this energy, um, to be able to express himself fully. Now you have faith. Your home is a household of faith. And so now you
Yes.
have to draw on your faith, and you say, okay, what do you like to do? And so there, that's where that healing comes on. You leaned on your faith, you leaned on your belief, you leaned on, um, in understanding what would Jesus do in this situation, and how can he, and how can my son grow beyond this? How can we transmute this incident, and take it as a learning experience, and then take this emotion of anger and just transmute it into that of love? And so that is a process, and you're still going through that process. When your son now went through that, because you said he likes reading, he likes, like teenagers, they read, they eat, sometimes they play some sports, sometimes they're eating the whole house down. That's like their sport, eating the whole house down, right? Because they have all this excess energy. Did he want to pick up like martial arts, or some way to, I need to learn to defend myself? Sometimes people think that, oh, I was so scared and I didn't do anything. I felt stuck. I have to learn how to defend myself. So I want to pick up MMA or whatever else. Did he go through that, or no?
No, my son actually not, because he's a very good in running,
Yes.
and he's very proud that he always said my solution is just run as fast as I could.
Ah,
Right.
yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
So he runs. Okay, but that's his solution, right? He's running his defense. He can run. He has that strength in his legs, and that's really encouraging. After that incident, how long did it take for him to go out to do another run?
Um, Not really immediately. I think
Okay.
he paused for uh, a week, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, not really immediately, because,
Yes.
and I said to him, it's better to avoid that park. It's
Yes.
better.
Hmm.
So if you want to go to another toilet, just find another toilet and just avoiding to that area.
Yeah.
And then uh, I think your comments about releasing the anger, as an adult, I also explained to him why I would like to advocate about the uh, racism,
Hmm.
especially unconscious bias,
Yes.
is because I think we can use our anger to something beneficial, that something bad happened to us. It doesn't mean we have to return that treatment to other
Yeah.
people, but we can transform it into something better for other people, so other people or other generations will not uh, uh, experience what we did
Yes.
experience.
Hmm. One, uh, and you said that very well. Um, I understand, and I think doing like that time. He had time to go through it, but he couldn't sit still. And being able to go back out there again, that takes a lot of courage,
Mhm.
because a lot of people, many people actually, they're going through a traumatic experience, a traumatic time, and it's very hard for them when they go into a safe space to be able to leave that safe space. So in this case, the safe space was his home, and then, but he loves running. He could have just easily have said, "I'm going to go run in the gym," right? Or I need a gym membership, or or I want to go in a different area. But instead, he was like, okay, I'm gonna go for a run. And I have another question to ask you about it, but I understand when my daughter went through bullying, and
Mhm.
experienced a death threat at 5, 6 years old. Now she's 7. That was a very trying time for her. And so there was a lot of tears, and she couldn't understand. And, this happened in the school, and, her friends didn't stand up for her. So she's like, they're, recognizing what's a real friend, what's a fake friend. How do you stand up for yourself? But because there was training that was done prior to, um, that incident, and
Mhm.
with her and I, and having conversation, and how do you stand up for yourself, and all of these different things. When it came, even though she was scared, she definitely was like, I felt afraid, but I know, and I knew that God is my shield. God will protect me. and that he couldn't do anything. And so that was the faith piece that she had.
Mhm.
Your son, he was like, he knew, okay, I could run. He came, he was threatened, and he just ran out of there as quickly as he can. But he just had, he may not be consciously have thought about that, but because he comes from a faith household, that's still there with him too at the same time, right? Knowing, okay, God is with me. I could do this. I can, I can get to safety and I can run. And so um, I understand as a parent, very scary when this happens, and your children are afraid, and then that healing process takes a very long time. This happened to my daughter last year. It took months and months, and then she didn't want to leave the house. She didn't want to go back to all of her activities because she was involved in a lot of activities, and the
Mhm.
person that did that, that threatened her, he was in her martial arts class. They were in the same
Wow.
class.
Wow.
She was in part of other. She was in other programs as well in the area, and it came to a point. I think it was like 5, 6 weeks after. I was like, okay, we got to do something. She didn't want to go to the park. She didn't want to do anything, and I was like, well, we got to find something to do. You can't just be at home. She's like, well, why not? She's like, well, we go to the library together because now I homeschool her. And
Mhm.
because she didn't want to go back to the school, obviously. And so we were homeschooling, but we'd go to the library to do the different work. We'll go in different areas because that was, I had to get her out of the house, right? So I took it slowly in that sense. And then when it came to, all right, let's find an activity. What do you want to do, like get back into? And she wanted to do her gymnastics and dance again, and art. And so we had to go out just for her comfort. We went out of our area, out of our community, into a different community so she
Mhm.
can meet new people and feel safe and comfortable, and but still doing the things that she loves to do so she can continue on with the healing process. And now we're at that point where, and you're right, similar to what you did with your son. Like, you guys talk about it, you get the anger out, you release all of it, but then it comes to a period where you're not necessarily, you're not dwelling on it. It may come up, but you're not dwelling on it. It's not like a complaint. And that's exactly what I had to do with my daughter after about 5 weeks. I'm like, okay, every day we've talked about this at night, just before you go to sleep, because you want to talk about it. In the daytime, you're talking about it sometimes. You know, let's ease up, because what we're doing is giving attention on this situation and what happened. We're not saying that this situation didn't happen, or we're not ignoring it or forgetting it, but we don't want to highlight and put attention into it. What did we learn from this? And as I start
Exactly.
changing, yes, when I start changing, asking of the questions, and like, well, I learned that. Well, for her, she's like, well, I learned that not all friends are friends, right? So she had to learn, what does it mean to be a friend? What kind of friend she wanted to be. But then at the same time, her faith increased because she was like,
Mm.
oh, God is my strength. I just knew that God is my strength. I did not, I, she's like, I believed he was going to do what he said he was going to do, but I still
Mhm.
knew in my heart that God is my strength and my shield, and nothing would happen to me, even though her life was threatened. Yeah. So it was really going back and saying, what did we learn from this lesson? How can we go from this? And then as a parent, similar to you, well, you got to get back out there, right? Maybe don't go down
Yes.
that path. Maybe run a different park. Maybe you do this. So now my question is, um, do you have, like, did you think, okay, maybe I should have a tracker on my son's phone to see, okay, he went for a run. This is where he's at. Not being paranoid, but just in case he normally takes however long it takes him to run, but he didn't come home or whatever it is. Like, did you go to that length?
I'm not taking that far because I learned from my psychologist, right?
Yeah.
I think the most important thing for us, as you said, we do not go to the extent that we become paranoid,
Yes.
but at the same time we also have to be vigilant, because our fear actually is good, because fear is protecting us.
Hmm.
So in these situations, because my son, I think because he managed to escape, so his trauma is kind of like a minor. So I do not want to exaggerate. I just let it go
Hmm.
for
Okay.
time being.
Yes.
But in addition to your comments about having faith and God is with us is very important, I told also to my son that our God is a loving God, and whatever it is, our ratios, our background, our culture, whatever it is, we are all equal. So God loves everybody. So that is very important to know that to know that He is love is very important,
Hmm.
because hurt people actually hurting people.
Hmm. That's so good. Hurt people, hurt people, hurt people. And it's such a sad cycle. But
Mm,
those hurt people need to heal. This incident
exactly.
happened. Now your son is running again, and life is continuing on, but there's still a journey and it's still a process. Now you've taken up this mantle, this advocacy. Tell us a bit more about that.
The About the mental health and
Yes.
trauma, yes, I did some research about the racisms. Actually, the racisms, isolations, name callings, and also unconscious bias towards the minority. It causes us trauma. Is trauma that it's not fair that we have to take it everything by ourselves, and eventually if we are not managing well to learn how to cope with that trauma, then it's come to for some people maybe lead to suicides. And apparently I did some research that the cause of mental health in is actually is very huge. In Australia per year, the cost of mental health is $220 billion for the nations,
Hmm.
because the statistic of the people that committing suicide is increasing,
Hmm.
and so far is 3,000 people per year commit suicides, equivalent to 9 people per day. And one people commit suicides
Hmm.
is will affect 125 people
Hmm.
roughly. And if we translate to the business, right, it costs the business for mental health 10.9 billions. So per year. So 4.7 billion for the absence of the
Hmm.
employee being absent, and 6.1 billion employee not productive, even though they go to work, but their mind is somewhere else and they are not productive. And mental health bullying is not only like physical but also psychological,
Hmm.
like mostly isolate a persons and excluded the persons, or through the gestures like staring the persons and gossiping. That is a mental health.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. And you've also, not only did you do research, but then you've also reached out to those in your community to get more information, to see, what resources are available.
Yes, I'm learning how to become the advocate. I'm currently undergoing the training
Yes.
with Are You Okay? If I pass the training, I will become the ambassadors of Are You Okay? So we are promoting Are You Okay? Actually promoting the suicide preventions,
Yeah.
and we will be doing some speaking to as a request by the organizations. So yes, I will be doing the training for 2 months, I think.
Hmm.
So, but it's very important because, um, yeah, as I said, hurt people hurts people.
Yeah.
So we need to break the cycles no matter
100%.
what.
Yes, yes, yes. And you've taken the steps. Your son is going on with his days and growing as every teenager should be. Um, but then you're doing the other piece, and this
Hmm.
is how your leadership, parental leadership, is changing. It's commendable because you're taking those additional steps. One, to understand what is actually going on in your country, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
you're doing that extra step in understanding what resources are available, either to get the support or share the support with the resources that are available. And then you took it another step further and said, what can I do? What can I do to help my family, my son, but help my community? Because when we take it into what can I do, we take
Mm-hmm.
up this mantle. And in this case, your mantle is um, you're getting some training and you're gaining more understanding and you did the research. You did what you can by yourself. And now you're getting that additional support so that you can take it into the community and into your community, whichever community it is, right? And let them know, hey, there is support. There is a way. Let's walk this way, because then instead of us being festered and full of anger and
Mm-hmm.
hatred, there is another way where we can support you. Let's support the youth. Let's support the teenagers who are hurting, who are angry, um, who may be feeling because they're listening to something on the news, or they're listening to, or read something, or they're listening to someone else. It could, who knows where it comes from. You keep hearing something over and over and over and over again. What ends up happening is then you start to believe that it is true. And so,
Exactly.
mhm. And so, how can we help these children that have mental health? So there are so many youth that are hearing these things over and over and over, whatever it is. Now they're taking it as truth. And then they're like, then they ask themselves, well, what can I do? I have to defend. I have to stand up. This is my duty. I got to do this. But they're full of ignorance. They're
Mm-hmm.
full of so much ignorance. And sadly, they don't know where to get the support. And so they're holding on or clinging on to those who are like minded, such as them, and forming a community, and then thinking hurting others is the solution when it is not. And so then the cycle continues. So your advocacy work, one, taking the time to help yourself heal, your son heal, help your home heal, and leading in that space. And now you're taking it outside, you're doing the research. What's available? What's going on with the youth of today? Because the youth of today are the adults of tomorrow who's going to lead this nation. And if they're going to
Exactly.
lead if they're going to lead this nation, then hey, what training is available now, and or what training is needed to get them on the path so they are full of love, humanity, just humanity. That's it, humanity. And then you took it another steps further and said, I'm going to start doing this in my community. I'm going to open my doors, walk out my door, and take it to my community. And I want others to know, taking it to your community doesn't mean you have to go knock on doors. You have social media. That's taking it to your community, right? Sharing. How
Exactly.
can we evolve? That's taking it in your community means perhaps joining an organization or creating your own organization that's showing how to heal from a trauma, or uh, um, like, how do we, with unconscious biases or conscious biases, how do we teach a generation of people to,
Yeah.
yeah, go through that? And so that's really taking it to your community. That's taking it into the community, and that, Juliana, is what you've done. And so I thank you so very much.
And I thank you for your feedback and your comment too, because as you said, they are young generations right now, and one day they become the leader.
Yes,
So yes, that is
100%.
very powerful comment. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. Do you have any final thoughts, any final words for us today, Juliana?
I think of my final thought, even though we are so different externally, different in color externally, but inside we are same. We are using the analogy like a chicken egg and duck egg. When you break the egg shells, we are the same. Our value the same. Our belief, our dream basically the same. We want to be loved, to be supported, to be appreciated, to be respected. That is basically human. We are all the same, even though we are different externally. So because people do not know us,
Mm-hmm.
that's the problem, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for sharing. If you guys like this episode, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you for joining us today on this very special episode of Conscious Leadership, where we're talking about parental leadership. When we talked about racism and how we discussed essentially how to heal from hurt. That was the whole premise of today's session, healing from hurt. And if you've learned something, if something has touched you today, please put it in the comments below. Share with others. Share this with others. Let us know in the comments how we may support you. And reach out to Yuliana to see, oh, what steps has happened. This happened to my child, or this has happened to me. How can I overcome? How can I heal from this pain? Have an incredible day, a great week, and I'll see you on another episode.